Looks like we're live. What's going on, everybody? Running about a minute late. I get on here and start looking at posts and stuff, and next thing you know, it's 15, 20 minutes later, and shit, better start this podcast up. All right, let me share the link. Here you go. What's going on, Chris? What's up, everybody? Hey, Michael. What's up, brother? Let me get these links shared. Y'all talk amongst yourselves. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Gotta open up all these links and share them out there. So what's everybody got going on this weekend? Let's see. Okay, so let me start sharing some links. Dadgum this thing. Okay, here we go. Hey, on this dead air here. I should be talking, I guess, to you guys. I can't read any of the chat, so if anybody's asking me a question or anything, I will answer as soon as I get back in there. But while I'm sharing these links, I can't see anything but the page that I'm on sharing to. So bear with me. It only takes a couple minutes. I wish I could automate this process. I keep saying I'll reach out to Facebook and find out if there's a way I can just post to the same groups every time, the same way, but let's come back and watch it. Post from John Bent's 47-minute John Bent's posted. I missed that. Oh, that was on Tracy's. I have to go back and check it out. Missed that. I have to go back and see that. I didn't like that. I wouldn't like them in the post. Oh, usually I get more than that. I guess it went too fast. Oh well. All right, I'm back, guys and gals. Shit, I've already missed a lot. What's going on, my grips? Michael, what's up, Curtis? Clint, Tim, what's up, brother? Drown out some hops. That's interesting. So that's the one thing I've never done is make beer. I mean, I made beer for whiskey, technically, but I've never made a beer for a beer. I wasn't a big beer fan growing up, but I've often been curious about the similarities. I did kind of read into a lot of beer making info and stuff when the early days of the internet and stuff, when it news groups and all that, learning how to make a better mash, because you make a good beer, you can make a good mash. So it's like you make a good wine, you can make a good brandy, as long as you don't fuck up the distillation process, which is pretty easy. You're kidding me, brother. You got somebody on the way? Hey, man, that sucks. What happened, man? Are you going to see Phil Billy tomorrow? That's awesome, man. Tell him I said howdy. I need to talk to him tomorrow anyway. I'll probably try to get up with him tomorrow. So where are you at, Clint? Broke down. Let me scroll down. I guess you might be answering me. I don't see it. Oats, pumpkin, brown sugar, and marshmallow. Man, that sounds very, very interesting. Let me know how that works out. Now with the pumpkin, we using, I guess it's got starches in there. You using amylase with it? I'm gonna Google this because I don't know how much starch is in a fucking pumpkin. I don't know many people that do. So yeah, I do Google shit. Maybe there are people on there out there teaching about distilling and all that know all about the starches in the pumpkin. I ain't that person. They do contain some starches, but low compared to other foods like potatoes and sweet potatoes. Does have amylase in there though. Natural. So they're studying some of the says here that some of the specific starch properties, such as its B-type structure and amylose content, are being studied for the food industry applications in the conversion of starch to soluble sugar. So someday in the future, they may start getting some amylase from pumpkins. So there's some natural amylase in there. So I don't know how much and how well it will convert, but that's pretty interesting. Something I didn't know, and I guess none of us would have had I not Googled it. So every once in a while it's good to Google information and share it, and but I don't know anybody that knows it all, and I don't know many people that know about the amylase content in a pumpkin unless they researched it. That's pretty much what we do. If we don't know something, we'll research it and figure it out, won't we? Awesome. Yeah, it's getting about that time, I guess. At the end of October, early November, there'll be a bunch of rotten pumpkins. I don't know, they might be already broken down. Well, I definitely should let us know how that works out. I'm interested to see what kind of flavor carries forward from the pumpkin, if it's just a melony taste or exactly. No, no, I've never put any moonshine in the mail, and I won't. That's a whole new crime, man. I mean, if they catch you making shine and even selling it, that's one thing. But putting it in the mail and mailing it to other states, yeah, that's a whole new ballgame. Nobody wants part of that. We don't. I'm here, brother. What's going on, Mike? We're about the same distance. I'm about 2 hours, maybe about a little over two. Depends on the traffic. If I don't hit that northern Kentucky standstill on 75, I can get there pretty quickly. But let's get back to our buddy Clint and see what Neil's where he broke down, brother. And what happened to your car? You got help on the way? I mean, if not, we can. I'm sure you got a phone. You've made some calls, but what's up? Oh, let's see here. Yeah. Hmm. Well, let's see here. Yeah. All right. Trying to fix things here. Oh well. Yeah. Okay. So, well, go figure that out later. Had the American whiskey logo in the corner, which is not me. So, I think I'll get it fixed. If not, let's talk to Damon about that. It's not showing it. Or is it? Oh, well, we'll work on that later. We'll fix that later. Trying to add a background. Oh, well. We'll figure all that out later. Maybe Damon, if he's watching, can jump on here and help me, but otherwise I'll just have to leave it like that. Anyway. Just a minute here. All right, we're still live, aren't we? Okay. Oh, well. That'll fix it. I think I get it now. Yeah, we're back to normal. Here we go. That's good. That'll work. Not sure which one. Just put AC clutch on it. 3 days ago. Been running fine. Won't turn over. Damn. Maybe that alternator hadn't been charging the battery good. I don't know. It won't turn over means the battery not allowing it to turn. That or maybe the alternator's so locked up it won't allow anything to turn there. Or the AC compressor locked up, not letting the belts turn and charge it up. I guess, does the belt look okay? And decent tension? You got somebody coming? Damn, that sucks, man. On Saturday night. I hate that. So you got somebody coming? Yep. Put an AC clutch on it. That's crazy. We're gonna find out won't turn over. I just wonder, but usually, I mean, I guess that battery might not been getting charged, and if it's something with the belt to the alternator generator. Awesome. How was it? Did you get to see Cyrus there? Kentucky, Wednesday and Thursday. Get ready. All right, brother. Let me know. Let me know. Wednesdays afternoons. Uh, no, I'm sorry. Thursdays afternoons aren't good for me, but Wednesdays for sure. Thursday afternoon, I take my daughter to the doctor, but sometimes they cancel, so we'll see. What proof do you run? Generally proof is a function of the still, and of course you have to have alcohol in your mash. If you have a 2% mash, you're not gonna get even. I guess if you put it on a column, you can still get the proof out of it pretty easy. But good deal. Yeah, that's what I'd start at 9 on a Saturday. It's kind of hard, but on the spirit run, I mean, my steel, it won't kick out anything less than 120, no matter how hard I try. I could run straight from the pot into the condenser, and I'm coming off at 120. I can't get any lower than that. So I've tried to. Um, so it's basically depends on the setup. So what's yours coming off at, and what was your gravity to start with? That's an important factor too. It's not just your steel, because I mean, the way my steel's set up, I could come off at anywhere from 120 up to 180 plus, depending on temperature. Um, hmm, yeah, it could be the solenoid. So what was the ABV of the mash of your mash? How much alcohol did you have in your mash? That will also be a factor in it. But most importantly, your steel setup is very integral in what kind of proof you're going to come off. Of course, if you don't have much proof in your mash, you're not, unless you run a big column and basically reflux all the water out and come out with a high proof that way, or use a deflegmator to do the same. It just depends on the steel. A lot of steels, most steels I've seen, modern day steels, come off at 130 plus. 130, 140 seems to be a pretty good average if you're not running thumpers or infusers or anything like that. Once you add thumpers and infusers to it, your proof's going to go up some because more water is being retained. So, it's really based on the setup and what you're going for, and you can adjust your setup based on what you're trying to get. If you're trying to get a brandy and you don't want to infuse and you're just wanting to get a good low proof with as much flavor as you can, you can run directly from your pot directly into your condenser. If you're trying to get a little bit more flavor and you're not worried about a little bit more proof, you can use some jar rig infusers, to if I proof it, I'm sorry. I didn't get your question off, brother. I'm sorry. Yes, I do. Definitely should. A lot of people say it's not a problem, but yeah, it's a good practice to proof it down to 80 before running it again. And proofing it down doesn't necessarily mean adding water. If you want to retain a lot of flavor, you can retain some back set and cut your liquor down with the back set, which has a lot of flavor in it, right? So if you have, let's say, a peach brandy, and you distill it and you take off all the water or all the alcohol and you run it down, should be running it down as far as you can into the tails, and pretty much all you have left is water, and a lot of water's come off there too, right? So you take a lot of water and alcohol off. So basically, you've concentrated what's left. It tastes horrible if you just try to take a drink of it. That taste will stand on your tongue all day, but it's really concentrated flavor. So if you want to proof down with back set and rerun that and try to get some of that flavor in there, a second time, I would say that's a little bit better than just using water, which will dilute, your flavors, and dilute a lot of the flavors and phenols and all that good stuff in there, flavonoids and all that good jazz. So, yeah, definitely. I would. I was going to say, I wouldn't just stop at 80. I'd take it a little bit below that to be on the safe side. And I know there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, it's just folk, it won't happen. You have to have pressure and all this jazz. All you have to do is go watch Mythbusters. Simple, a couple episodes they had on it, and yes, you can. And for the people that say you have to have pressure, if you let me show you this graph here. I love my charts, so we're going back to Chartville. Let's see here. All right, if you look at this chart here, a lot of people think that, when a still, you get the still temperature up, the pot temp up to 173.1, ethanol is going to start boiling off, right? I talk about this a lot for the people that haven't heard this spiel. You're going to hear it. Alcohol boils at 173.1 degrees if it's pure ethanol. So if you have pure 100%, 200 proof ethanol, its boiling point is 173.1 degrees. The second you start adding water to that, because it's an azeotrope, the boiling point raises. And you can see on this graph, see the bottom line is proof. Is percent, not proof, so 100%. But it doesn't quite go to 100. If you notice it doesn't cross that line, is because it's really difficult to get 100 percent ethanol. And if you do, it has to be in a vacuum, because once it touches air, it starts pulling moisture out of the air because it's hygroscopic. So like a desiccant. So it'll cut itself down. And the more you leave it in the air, the more it will do that. Not necessarily always a bad thing. Some people air out their jars to get some of the higher volatiles out, and that tends to work okay. But as you add more and more water and your percent alcohol decreases, the boiling point increases. Now, boiling point of water 210. That's if it's pure water. But the second you start adding alcohol to water, you lower the boiling point of the water. So this is the graph that shows the relationship of that. Now, if you look on this graph at 40 and you go up, that's 80 proof, right? 40% is 80 proof. So if you go up about 182.5 will be the boiling point for that. So if you've got 80 proof alcohol in your still and you're used to cooking at 198, 200 degrees, and you crank that still up to 198, 2 degrees, that alcohol in there is going to be super boiling. It's going to be boiling, and it's going to build pressure unless you have a large, if you have an 1.5 inch, 2.5 inch ferrules and spools coming off your still, it's going to handle that pressure pretty well. If you have a good shotgun condenser or large sized, worm, it's going to handle that pressure. If you've got anything in line, it's going to increase that pressure. But if you've got that alcohol in there super boiling, it's building up a lot of pressure. And if you got like a beverage still with the really small copper lines coming out of it, you're building up more pressure than that thing's going to be able to handle with that seal. And all of a sudden, you're going to have boiling alcohol spewing out the sides. And if you're using, propane, you're going to have a big problem on your hands. So I don't listen to anybody that says that's not true, because there is a safety hazard. Yes, if you didn't have an open flame, you could do it. If everything's perfect, sure, you could probably do it. Why take a risk? If you want to push it and you want to be the person that says, but it's never happened, before. Everybody says it's never happened before until it happens. Of course, it's never happened before until, of course, it does happen, and then usually it's too late, and it's a hindsight 2020 thing. Then it's like I wish I would have listened. But yeah, it's definitely best to be on the safe side. Proof down to 160. It came off at 160. Yeah. Let's see here. One moment. Bear with me a second, folks. Anytime people put up links, like any links, don't hit them. They're just people trying to sell viewers. I like my own viewers. I like real people. I'm not worried about numbers. But yeah, it's I'm sorry, at first I didn't realize what you were talking about, but yeah, definitely be on the safe side. And 60 is an excellent practice, and you did the right thing. But yeah, try next time. Try to instead of proofing it down with water and diluting some of your flavors out, and try mixing it with that back set again. That thing is packed full of concentrated flavors still, because all that fruit and everything that went into it still in there, and it's so concentrated. If you ever taste it, it tastes horrible. It's really strong, and after you cook it, it's not good. But those flavors are there, and that it will carry those flavors forward. It's just so concentrated and mixed with so many congeners and other things. It does taste horrible, but it's not bad to proof down and rerun with. And in fact, I think that's part of the method that they use for cognac to layer the flavors and get it stronger. What's going on, Scott? Good to see you, brother. Like your brother Clint's broke down on the side of the road. Hope everybody's having a good Saturday night. I'm gonna have to have me a little drink. I ain't gonna wait for somebody to call shots. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Huh. What we got here? Wait a minute. Let me see. Damn it. I hate empty jars. That's a horrible thing, empty jar. Oh, that's not empty. That's something else. Okay. Well, drink on this. Tasty. Gotta go be an admin. Uh-oh. I hate it when I have to do that. That sucks. Now, I didn't see this a minute ago. Damn, how does this, do things just pop up like randomly? That wasn't there. That comment was not there a minute ago, because I looked at the 120, 160 that's right below it. Now, being a Honda, can't, yeah. Yeah, it's stupid the way they do these. My Honda, well, it's a Acura made by Honda, old used one. But I know what happened. I made the mistake of taking it in. So I'm not gonna name the place because I don't want to get the oil changed. And this place doesn't have ramps, so I guess they jack it up. to get the oil filter off. Well, I guess they thought that the base of my timing chain, the stabilizer, the tensioner, it mounts into the motor and into the frame all there together, right? Well, I guess they thought that would be a good spot to put that jack. Totally fucked it up, man. It cost me almost $2,000 to get that whole part and everything replaced down there. They had to take a lot off to replace that. And of course, I can't prove anything. I know that's what's happened. I mean, I didn't see him jack it up. I didn't see him put the jack there, so I can only assume. But they're like, you must have hit something. We didn't, yeah, right. I hit a damn thing. Only thing I've ever hit on that car is the front underneath the bumper, the front air dam, hitting little curbs and shit, pulling in and out, or scuffing a little bit, pulling in and out where it sits low. Running in the woods in the winter, it's tough, brother. That's a tough thing to do. It's really tough to keep your mash. I know you're from KY. It's really tough to keep your mash from getting frozen. It's really tough to get your steel up to temp, and you got depends on your setup. If you got a big cap, it's staying cold. So your proof's definitely going to go up because you're going to get a lot more reflux than normal. It's tough, it's best to try to build you a little shack, or, get you a little tent or something, try to get yourself out of the weather and be able to get some heat. And it's just real tough. Really tough. But if you're able to mash in, in a basement or in a house or somewhere that's heated, the garage, whatever, if you heat it, or in a heated area or something, because you got to have some warmth to mash in. As far as running in the woods, it's going to be tough, especially if you get that cold rain. Don't even think about it, man. That cold rain on your condenser is going to, it's going to be tough. Your proof's going to be very high, and it's not going to run right. It's tough. But if you're in an area where you can heat it and keep it warm, and maybe the fire or whatever that's keeping or using keep warming up the steel, propane or fire or whatever, if it can keep the place that you're in warm, and you just keep putting the gas to it, that uses a lot of gas. It's just real tough. That's why most of my winter runs, I just come inside and use that little Vever on the stove top. It does the fine job. My stove, now I will say, if you're going to do it on the stove, make sure that when your stove is like almost all the way high, that it doesn't cycle on and off, on and off, on and off to maintain that temp. Mine stays on the whole time, and it doesn't get any hotter, but it just stays on, and it stays on max, which I like about it. It's a smooth top glass, and it's the infrared type, and that little red stays on. It doesn't flicker on and off. And now I got another one up here and I really messed up for that watermelon run. I've got a front burner going out, I'm like, fuck, I can't make this run, oh my God, I'm not gonna be able. And I didn't think, man, this is how stupid I can get sometimes. It took me about an hour to figure out, well, I'll just slide it to the other side of the stove and use that side, because I use two burners at once, because it's 18 gallons sitting on there. I hate to admit that, but yeah, I was that fucking stupid at that point. It was early morning, and I don't know where in the hell my head was, but it took me an hour. I was really frustrated. I was like, well, damn, what am I gonna do? I can't run this shit. Then I started thinking, I mean, it is kind of hard because there's so much weight and everything. I had to take a lot of a lot of the mash out of the steel, so I could slide it over and all that. And I had a lot of bracing and stuff for my um, cap and plumbing above. So it was pretty tough, but yeah. I thought, man, there's two sides to that fucking stove. I just push it to the other side. I'm just so used to doing it on that one side, that one burner, that one, because that front right burner is the hottest. It's like a 3200, and then the back one's like a 19 or 22, and then the front left is another small one. It's like 22, and then the back one on the other side, I think, is like a 28. So it's not quite as hot as the front right one. It's the hot one, But yeah, I mean, if you get electric rig set up, and I mean, if but out in the woods, you're not going to be able to generate. It's just tough, man. It's really awesome. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of people doing apples right now. Saw somebody, I think Philbilly's looking for deer apples. If anybody knows of any cheap, real cheap or free apples that he can go collect or get, let him know, because he's on the lookout. I did see someone else advertise something about maybe 100. I can't remember how many 100 pounds of apples for $80. It's a lot. It's tempting. If I had a truck and it's close, I'd probably go. There's a place in Indiana that has a lot of fruit and stuff secondhand. They sell real cheap. I'd love to be able to make it to that, because or if we could just get several people to go in together and make a trip there, and all pay for their U-Haul truck, or somebody drive and got a decent sized truck. Because you'd have to have more than a pickup to make it worth your while, spend that kind of money on gas, you know. I do want to ask you a question, Tony. Now, if you can do this for me, I'm not sure what kind of apples you're using, but if you can weigh out about 22 pounds of apples and then grind those up and press them, let me know how much juice you get out of those. It's my understanding, and from my practice in the past, it's 22 apples, average sized apple, to a gallon of juice. I mean, 22 pounds. Yeah, 22 pounds of apples, not apples themselves. Way out 20 to 22 pounds of apples. Yeah. Well, Mike, as far as airlock and mash, it just depends. If and it depends on who it is and what it is, what it is that you're doing. A lot of commercial places making brandies will. Commercial places making whiskeys won't. Simple reason being, a whiskey mash and a grain mash will generally, if all conditions are good, it'll work off in 3 to 5 days. Pretty well. They go quick. If all conditions are right, they go really quickly. So there's not a lot of time for fungus and bacterial buildup and a lot of things like that to happen over that short period of time, right? So they don't really worry about it so much. I mean, they'll keep their fermenters clean after they dump. They'll, should kind of rinse it out and then ready for the next, unless they're sour mashing. But um, yeah, they're not really concerned about a few fruit flies getting in there and bringing in some acetobacters, because it's just such a large vat of alcohol and teeny little flies, and they're just, it's in 3 to 5 days. There's just no time, and it's not enough, and there's no way that's gonna, that's gonna go bad. So for a grain mash in a place that's got controlled temps and controlled environment and everything, that the mash is going to work off pretty much 3 to 5 days, and it's not an issue. Um, on the other hand, brandy, something that you're going to be fermenting for weeks and weeks and weeks, sometimes 3 4 weeks or more. If you want to make more of a wine of it, you want to mature the wine before you actually make a brandy, and get some more interesting flavors and some unique flavors, you got to let your brandy go. You can make a brandy and make a fruit, and as soon as it's fermented, just distill it. Or you can make more of a wine out of it and develop more flavors. Now, see, just like all wines, over time they get better, but not all fruit gets better over a long, long period of time. So some of your fruit brandies, you know, have a year, 2 years, 3 years before they start declining in quality, whereas a grape tends to increase in quality over time like that. So it just depends on the fruit. But a lot of times when you're making a lot of brandy makers, it'll ferment from 2, 3, 6 months, maybe more, depending on the fruit and the distiller. Now, I don't think a lot of commercial brandies can wait that kind of time unless they're really expensive. But to get a good wine, it's in to make a good wine for a brandy or just as a wine, you definitely want to have that airlock, because usually it's in a smaller batch. What we do is in a small batch, a little fruit fly, a few dozen fruit flies in that, and they will come. Trust me, they will. You won't even see them. You don't even know they're there, but they'll be in there. You'll see them in the airlocks. And so those can spoil it because they carry these acetobacters on their bodies from being on rotten fruit and stuff. And this bacteria can carry forward and set up a mother of bacteria situation, and back to it can turn into vinegar. And so that's why a lot of people that are fermenting for longer periods of time will probably airlock. Even if you're using grains and you're the type, hey, I'm gonna get this ferment started. I'm busy as fuck this week. Next month maybe I can run it. I'm just gonna have to let it sit a while, and it'll keep fine. But the longer that you're gonna let it sit, the better probably you'd be served by having it under some kind of airlock or restrict the airflow. Now, a lot of people put a towel over it and then kind of firmly press the lid back on, but not seal it, right? So it's kind of holding in the CO2 and trying to force out the oxygen. So that's kind of airlockish. It's still holding in the CO2 and trapping it to an extent, versus just a complete open where it doesn't at all and oxygen can come into contact with everything. But if it's closed and you have the lid on and it's not like on airtight, but just kind of pushed on with the towel, and air is asked to kind of force its way out, you can you can do that, and it'll be okay if you don't have an airlock. Or if you want to use an airlock, it's fine. If you have a bigger fermenter and the little teeny airlocks, so it's just blowing out the water or something like that, just use a 2 liter and a vinyl hose or a silicone hose or something like that going into it, and that'll work just the same. You know, um, you just have the hose coming out of the lid going right into the 2 liter bottle that's filled with water or whatever, and it'll sit there and bubble through, but that water won't allow the bugs to swim down and climb up, and get into your fermenter. So, Tony, did you use pectic enzymes or what's going on, Steve? How's it going, brother? Got the mellow corn. You like it? It's not bad. Not bad at all. It's a lot better than some of it I drink out there, that's for sure. I've had some pretty bad over the shelf shine. And I've had some interesting ones. So didn't use the pectic enzymes. Okay. Well, I like using a little pectic with my apples. Certain fruits I'll use it with. Just helps get a little bit more juice out of it. But at the same time, it does add a little bit more heads. And some people say it changes the flavor a little bit. If you're going to age it, maybe improves things a little bit. But, maybe straight drinking it straight off the tap, maybe not as good. So, well, that's good, brother. You wasn't too far. Yeah, it sucks, man. Yeah, molasses is slow fermenting. I don't care about the caps. I don't get offended by capital letters. I can't hear them. Um, I do that too sometimes. I'll have caps lock on and it's like, fuck it, I'm not retyping that whole thing just because it's all caps. So I just leave it. I don't care. Um, Molasses will slow down the fermentation process, and there's unfermentables in molasses as well, so it won't ferment out dry unless you use a special rum that has enzymes in it that'll help break down some of those limit dextrins, but unfermentable sugar. Yeah, 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 here you go. In my 20s, making wine with juice. Everybody loves that, man. That's some good stuff in it. I tell you what, people scoff at me when I tell them that you can make some good wine with Welch's grape juice. They're like, oh, these little wine snobs. And I'm like, that's good stuff. You can make good. But yeah, let's see. Fish tank air tube in the loop. Make it. And yep, that definitely works, brother. Or you can just take it, go directly, just take it, loop it into another small bottle or just a water bottle or something like that with water and just let it bubble in there. It's just preventing any insects from crawling up the tube. So that's why you just put it in the water and just keep those insects from crawling in. But heck yeah, that's the way to do it. Yeah, pectic enzymes aren't they're not too expensive, and you really don't use a lot of them. So the pound or whatever you buy off Amazon will last a long time because you don't use a lot. But it's amazing. When you do get them, I urge you to try this with peaches or apples. Now, with other fruits, like berries and stuff, it's kind of hit and miss. You don't really need it like your raspberries, blackberries, and all that. Don't waste your time and don't waste the flavor. But for like peaches and apples, next time do half and half in different barrels, and then in one barrel go regular, and in the other barrel add your pectic enzymes. And look at the difference, man. I was amazed at how much. I mean, with peach, I used to love peach, and making the peach brandy. It's a slimy, pulpy peach. And I used those enzymes, man, the first time, and I was amazed at how much thinner and how it thinned it out. It also makes it easier to clear when you're ready to run and you're starting to let it sit and settle, it'll clear a lot better for you. If you got those pectic enzymes in there breaking up a lot of that pulp and matter. But it will increase your head, so you will have to change your cuts a little bit. On the front end, you'll have to increase your cuts a little bit. Yeah, it's got to be either a loose wire or maybe even a fuse, blown or something like that to it. That's good. 18 to 20. I mean, that's about as much as you can ask out of your yeast. That's all your yeast is going to do. 18 to 20, and that's at least EC 1118 will get you that. Some yeast won't even get you there. So um, that's good. And how much sugar did you add to it? Maybe next time cut back just a tad on the sugar and try to get it to you know we'll just measure your original starting gravity if you don't have the hydrometer yet. That's another tool. This is things you just build over time. Just save up money and as you can get them. And that's the best way to do it. And just I've got a big old list on Amazon that things I want, and as I can afford them, I'll go to my list and it'll show me what prices have changed. And if I see a price drop on something I've been wanting, I'll go ahead and maybe try to get it then if it's a decent discount. But um, yeah, having a good triple scale hydrometer to measure your mash and the sugars in your mash helps a whole lot. It's definitely a tool you want. And I know that a lot of people are out there, oh, moan grown, you don't have to have that. No, you don't. You don't have to have any of that. You don't have to have pH testing. You don't have to have good water. You don't have to have good yeast. You don't have to have anything. It's just these things make it better and can improve on it, and that's the most important part. So it's not an issue of you have to have these things, because they've been doing this for a couple thousand years, long before a lot of these instruments were ever made. And I didn't have a lot of these instruments and all this pH stuff when I started. I didn't have all that, but now that it's available and I know how to use it and what it's for, hell yeah. If it was available back then, you're damn straight I'd buy it, and so would most anybody else. Now, I will say, once you get experienced, or once you start running the same recipe over and over again, you'll know how much citric acid to add to the water from the get-go. You'll know what your water supply, what the pH is from it naturally. It's a 7.1 or a 6.8 or whatever. And I know that if I add X amounts of tablespoons to, this fermenter, it'll drop it down to around 5.5, 5.0, somewhere around there, where I can get a decent start. So once you get used to all these things, you can rely less and less on these instruments. But it's great for beginners to see and use, and having them will help you make better liquor. That's just a fact. Um, there's a lot more to it, and you can make it as simple as you want to. I'm not trying to tell anybody this is the only way to do it. But if you want good results, and if you have a problem, a lot of times you can foresee problems before they happen when you use these things. You won't be that person, oh, I don't believe none of that science stuff. And then 2 weeks later, my fermentation stuck. Why? Well, you got pH. No, I'll never check pH. Well, that's probably part of the problem. What's the temp of it? I ain't got no thermometers. I've never had any problem before. Well, of course, it goes back to, you never had a problem till you have a problem. Then all of a sudden you got a problem. So yeah. But yeah, it's good to add little tools as you can. Get your proofing hydrometer at the same time. They come in a combo pairs. I think there might be 10, $12 for a combo of triple scale and a proofing. One will tell you, approximately how much sugars you got, not fermentable sugars, just sugars you got in your mash. And then the other one, of course, will tell you the proof for your alcohol. So um, there's a couple of good important tools to have. I like the pH paper. I've used the pH pens forever. They're expensive. You have to calibrate them all the time. It's a little mini science experience in its own, trying to keep them calibrated and keep them clean, and distilled water and all this, and keeping them. I mean, no longer. I did that for 15 years. I don't know how many of those little yellow pens in there, that don't work, or out of calibration and won't calibrate and won't work. Um, but the paper, it's easy. Keep it in a cool, dry place inside a drawer, out of the light, and just tear off a little piece, dip it, match the colors up. Good, you're done. Simple. And it's like $10 for 180 inches. They say use an inch. I use half inch, so it'll get me 360 testings. And I just put them on little tweezers, stick them down the mash, stir it up good, right? And then stick it down that mash, pull it out, just lay it next to that chart. And this chart that I've got is kombucha. It's made for these test strips are designed for the tea fermentation. If you're all familiar with the kombucha tea fermentations that people do, these test strips are made for them, and they operate in the same pH range we do, right? The acidic. We don't want anything above 7 at all, ever. Period. The end. Ever. So we keep, everything within. We want everything to be from 3 to 5.5, range. So it'll definitely, tell you your pH in those ranges, and if you're way off in the, um, positive side, and you're very basic, it'll of course tell you, you just need to add acid until you get into the color range, right? So it's real easy to test. Anybody can do it, and anybody can read a thermometer. You can get the little laser that you point. I like the old school type that you stick in there. It takes a couple minutes maybe for it to get there, but they seem to be very accurate. So having a thermometer, a pH paper, and hydrometers, both triple scale and proofing, are probably very important tools to have. Now, a drill with a mud mixer, another good important tool to have, Tony. So these are just things y'all will want to build up to and add as you go. But it certainly helps to be able to foresee problems before they happen using this instead of just winging it. Yeah, once you get experience and once you get some years under your belt, you won't need as much of that stuff. But they still do come in handy. And when you do this, when you get your hydrometer, when you have your mash, try to taste it. Taste it a little bit, put it on your fingers, see how sticky your fingers gets as it dries. And go by taste and feel and smell and how sticky your fingers get, and then try to guess what it is, and then drop your hydrometer in there and see how close you are to guessing. And you keep doing that and do the same thing when it's done. Test it and say, oh, I can't hardly taste any sweetness in that at all. And so you can test it at the beginning and the end, and also do the taste tests as if you didn't have that equipment. And that way, not if, but when that hydrometer breaks, and it always breaks when you need it, you'll be able to hopefully wing it just by tasting it and get on by. Of course, Amazon usually have it at your door in 2 days. So there's that, but not everybody can, and not everybody will have Amazon that close and deliver that fast. But so that'll help you become less dependent on it. But just kind of test yourself each time. It's kind of a little game for me. Is how close can I get? Oh, that's definitely 107. Oh, I can taste the corn. Oh man, that's good and sweet. And drop your hydrometer in there and see what conversion you got and see what it is. And then at the end, taste, oh, that's bitter. I can't taste any of that. Oh, that's dry. I think that's below 1. And test it and see if it's really dry and below 1. And kind of, do that. That way you don't have to have it, maybe one day. But I still enjoy using all my equipment, test stuff, and just and keeping notes. But again, keep notes. Remember, it's on beer and wine. On the beer you're making and the wine you're making. Besides turbo, what's fastest fermenting? Just converted sugars and yeast. Well, converted sugars. Now it depends. If you're talking about a grain, uh, I'd go with data yeast. It's as fast as anything. If it's probably a fruit and you're wanting fast, and I'd probably go with an EC 11, 18, or 16. Those are both pretty quick working and pretty tolerant. Have a high tolerant range. But I wouldn't necessarily go on just speed, because most often faster in the wine, beer, and liquor making, faster doesn't most always makes things worse. So the longer you take your time and let things work completely, except fermenting, you don't want to necessarily let everything ferment completely dry, because that will affect the flavor of your fermentation or your distillation. So you don't necessarily always want things to ferment dry. Sometimes you want to have a little bit of sweetness less when you ferment if you want that to carry forward. So all these people say, oh, you got to wait until it's 1 or below. No, that's not necessarily true at all. I mean, we tell a lot of people that so they don't start distilling at 1050 and just get impatient. But like we were talking about earlier, when you have molasses in there, if you don't use a specific enzymes or yeast that have some of these enzymes in them, you're not, chances are you may not finish dry, depending on the yeast that you use. Group trash can, cool. Yeah, Sugarland's 120. Cool. Yeah, mellow. I kind of I don't know about the 120. I don't know if I've tasted that one specifically, but for the most part, I did like Nick Calo's that peanut butter. If y'all have tried that peanut butter shine he's got, I thought that was pretty interesting tasting. It was a unique thing for me. It was the first timer for me tasting a peanut butter shine. I like peanut butter and peanuts, so I like it. You know, it's different and unique, and I kind of dig it. I thought it was pretty interesting, but you know, Mellow Corner was pretty good. I remember back in the day, what was that Georgia or what was that called? Georgia Moon from back in the 80s and 90s. Now that stuff, I don't know, that's pretty hot. Most of the shine from around home is better than that. I remember when they had it and everybody's drinking it and stuff, and you're like, God damn, man, I think I just soon go to Town Mountain or make my own. Town Mountain's where we used to go get a lot of shine when we didn't make it ourselves. You could ride your bicycle over there and get it. You know, it was Dry County bootleggers. They didn't give a shit. But they'd sell peach and grape. And of course, you know, it'd have half a peach in that quart jar, you know, and gave it that good peach flavor. Of course, probably masked a lot of that heads and stuff too. And same with the grape, you know. But it was that was definitely better than the Georgia Moon and some of the other ones that were around back in the day. Yeah, I was amazed at what the enzyme. All right, what are we talking about here? Didn't think about that. About less water evaporation. Well, I forgot what I was talking about. I get several going on at once. But yeah, I was really amazed at how much pulp and slime that those enzymes took care of. Now I let them work like a couple of days. They say, you know, let them work at least overnight. 24 hours is best. But you know, I don't get in a hurry. You know, if anybody knows me, you know, I'm definitely operating a different time element. That shit gets done when it gets done around me, and if it gets done, I got a big list of shit to do. It keeps getting bigger, and I keep getting older, and it makes it that much harder to do. I don't know. Yeah, you can reuse your yeast absolutely. Yeah, I mean, sour mashers, you know, unless you're dumping. Now, the reason I tell people that when you're doing sour mash to run your tails all the way out, because you don't want to, you don't want to dump hot back set on your sour mash, right? Because that hot kills every the yeast in there. So their yeast is living in there. So let it cool, but run all that alcohol out that you can, and that way you'll have less alcohol going in on top of your yeast too, because they can only handle so many percent of alcohol before it denatures them. So if you want to, you take your back set while it's still hot. You know how much sugar to add to it. Add that sugar while it's hot. Make a good thick mixture and let it cool, and then add it to your sour mash, and then let it go that way. But yeah, you can just stir it in, and just the yeast in the yeast bed, and that sour mash will pick right back up and start over and keep going. Also, if you've got malted grains in there, it's a good, if you're doing a sour mash, just throw handfuls of malted grains in there, and that'll help substitute for any kind of nutrients that you need. So you'll be, good on your nutrients. So then just toss some oyster shells, or crushed oyster shells in there to help maintain your pH. And, once you figure out how much back set you want to keep and how much sugar that you're going to add to that based on how much, you know, you've got in the mash barrel and how much you're going to do, you try to do the same thing over and over and over and over, and supplement your grain each time. Maybe 5 or 10% of the grain, replenish it. That way you can just perpetually keep that sour mash going. If you don't, um, after about the fifth to eighth generation, depending on how you run it, it starts to get pretty thin. The flavors start to thin out, and you're basically all the grains are spent. They're not adding any flavor, and you're basically just fermenting back set and sugar. And that's, it starts. But if you supplement fruits, 5 or 10% every run, 10%, I would say would be a good point. Then you can just keep going perpetually, and keep that sour mash going all summer long. 50-pound peaches, 40 pounds sugar, 4 gallons. Cool. Yeah, now having that hydrometer will help you immensely. What you do is you get all your peaches mashed in, you get all that juice, and use that, the pectic enzymes on them, and then you see how much, what your gravity is of that peach juice. And generally 1040, on the peach, 1050, and from that, if they're real sweet peaches and very ripe peaches, then you can add just enough sugar to get it to 107, 080, 90, whatever in that range that you want to do. And that way you won't be adding too much, save yourself some money on sugar and make a decent mellow, good tasting brandy. But yeah, that sounds about right, brother. Yeah, I'd say, 40 pounds of sugar, 1 pound per gallon, I think is like a 1045, if I'm not mistaken, because I think 2 pounds per gallon is a 1090. I thought it was something a little over 1080, and I think last episode we looked it up, and it's actually 1090. So I think 1 pound per gallon would be half that, so it'd be 1045, and plus the 4.5 that the peaches are probably going to give you, right, put you about a 108, 090. So that's about right. I still use them all the time, Clint. I just like having them now. I went so long without them. I'm a geek too. I just love the science part of it. So I like, I like to make note of things, and keep little notes on what's what and how much I get out of what, and so I figure if I'm going to buy it and I'm going to have it, why not check it out and use it. But if it is a recipe that I've done a bunch of times, I probably won't pull it out. If it's, something basic, meal shine, meal and sugar, yeah, I ain't pulling that thing out. I don't need it. But I do a lot trying to do new stuff, I definitely will use it for sure. Yeah, mud mixer, paint mixers. I think they're about the same price. Let me see. I'll show y'all the one I use, and I like it real well. It's I've been thinking about sharpening the sides of it so it'll cut through fruit. So y'all can tell me what you think about that idea. Let's see. Home Depot. I know Home Depot and Lowe's both carry it. Damn it. Yeah, let's see. Here we go. That's me right there. Damn, don't buy this one though. Are you kidding me? $96? Are you kidding me right now? Okay, yeah, use this one instead. It ain't $96. Holy fuck. That's crazy, man. That's insane. Wow. Okay. Anyway, get this one. Let me show you. Let's see. Is that round though? No, that's round. This one I got's flat. I don't like that one. Let's see. The one I have is flat on the sides. Okay, it's like this, but it's not painted. Yeah, it's just like this one, but it's not painted. Here, let me grab this pick. Yeah, I don't think I would get the painted one because, you know, alcohol and stuff is going to definitely work on that. So let me get that screenshot to where I can find it. Okay. This is the one I use, and it's very simple, but get the zinc, don't get the painted one. If you could find a stainless one like this, get that. But these spiral, these are just thin blades of steel, and they kind of spiral. It's kind of hard to tell that they curve and spiral. But I think the one I got zinc plated, and a lot of the zinc's worn off. Not a big deal. But you could probably copper coat that one I've got. It's basically just steel now. And I know a lot of people will shudder at the thought of using steel. At the same time, they fry their chicken on cast iron. So it's not like a lot of that's carrying forward, you know. So yeah, those work pretty well though. I was thinking about sharpening the edges of it so it would mulch through the fruit a little better and cut it up and stuff. But it macerates pretty well as it stirs. It does a pretty good job. So, uh, but they're pretty cheap. You can get them at Home Depot and Lowe's, and I think they're about the same price maybe as that one was $10. And it's 23-inch and it's $10. That's a pretty good deal if you get one without paint, or if you want to just strip the paint off that one, or just find one. I'm sure there's one for the same price that ain't painted. But yeah, that's $10, 23-inch. So it does okay until you get into the big, you know, big huge barrels and drums, and you can get an extender for these. So it's got the little octagon, you know, you can get the extender, you can kind of screw it on, or you can just, if you got somebody welds, you can weld on an extension, or, you know. But yeah, that one works really well for me. And it's $10. Let's see. There's some on Amazon. Here's one that's 15 for $9, but it's only 15.3 length, but it's zinc, and the zinc's okay, and even the steel underneath it's fine. Even a little bit of the rust isn't going to hurt you at all in the distillate and all that. It's not, that little bit is not that critical. Um, but yeah, any type of those mixing paddles, the paint mixers or the mud mixers, any of those will do the job. You know, it's, I don't know that one's better than another. I like this one because it seems like that those angles help get a circular, whereas the other ones just kind of beat and might do like a blender. But these, you know, I can forward and reverse, and it kind of goes this way or this way, depending on. So it kind of, you know, does that number instead of just blending in circular motion. So it kind of stirs up the bottom, and it's great for like when you stirring up mash while cooking it, because it will force stuff to the bottom and out and around, kind of like, you know, your um, submarine pots, you know how they build that circular motion up. Well, it's the same thing with this. It forces things down to the bottom of the cook pot and then out and up to the sides, unless you reverse the drill, and it'll do the opposite, right? So it's pretty good for cooking too, and to keep things from getting sticks sitting on the bottom and scorching. But definitely helps from using the stirring sticks. And there's nothing wrong with using the stirring paddles. They're actually got those too. I think Phil Billy's got all this stuff. You know, I'm pretty sure he's got all this stuff. If you want to check his site out. Paint mixer, mud mixers, both work just fine. pH, is that what we're talking? If you're talking about pH, yeah, less than 3. Once you start getting in the 2s, but I'm not sure that's what we're talking about here. Now that sounds good. That's about 3 pounds to the gallon. That sounds right, brother. Sounds damn good. Don't forget that glucose, Emily. That stuff, that's almost as important as the alpha. It's essential. Do they still sell it, George? I hadn't seen it on the shelves in a long time. Yeah, it was hot as hell. Yeah, that Georgia moon, man, it was fire. It was nowhere near as good as any of the shine I was getting around town. Well, I was a kid, so it was probably as good as what I was making back then, for sure. I know the first few times first probably close to half dozen times I made mine, we scorched something somehow, some way. Is either the mash or when we were cooking it, or got too much sediments or a few kernels and shit in there that scorched when we were cooking it off. So we learned the hard way. We drank quite a bit of scorched shine back in the day, but we were damn proud. I was wondering what you was talking about, chimpanzees. I'm like, okay. I say, damn, Clint don't like these people. Bunch of monkeys over in Georgia making this shit. Oh, that's funny, man. Yeah, having the triple scale is good, and the proofing hydrometer are both important. Definitely important to have. Well, now a lot of people, Clint, that do the sour mash, they keep a lot of the grains, the grain bed, and pour the back set back on top of the old grain bed, see, and use that for the flavoring. So, but it's always skim off the top, the floaties on the top that are spent. But I say go in there and take out a few cups or few pounds of the old and replenish it with the new. Yeah, some people are still using, they after they finish their fermentation and they rack off the clears and everything, they don't bother pressing all the juices out of the rest. They just leave that there and just run it, and then take the back set, a certain amount of back set, maybe half, a third, and add the sugar that they know that they're going to need, depending on how much you're running, and melt it in that back set, and then let it cool, and then add that back to the grains from the last either press or whatever, if you press all the juices out, and just reutilize those old grains again and again and again. Yeah, so they're saving everything, and just redoing it on the same old mash over and over and over again. So if you do that, you definitely want to pull out 10% and add that back each time. And if you do, you can make it perpetual. You'll still have the same exact amount every time, and nothing will change. But you just develop a little rhythm of how much sugar you're going to need based on how much it did the last time, and how much packs it the last time. So you just kind of back your way into um, your recipe, and then if it needs more sugar next time, or you can add more sugar then, but next time, when you melt it down to add more, or if the pH didn't, drop enough or get sour enough, you use a little more sour mash. Sometimes if you get too much, you can use a little, or back set, you can use a little less the next time. But a lot of different ways and methods to sour mash. Oh yeah, yeah. You don't have to won't have to buy yeast or nutrients or anything doing it this way, unless you get too high alcohol content in there and it kills the yeast, or if it gets too hot, you pour hot back set in on it and kill it. But yeah, I got it. Yeah, yeah. I think they both work well. I mean, they both serve the bill of mixing. But I like the way mine forces it down with those curves, those spirals. It forces the liquid down and up the sides, and you can see it doing that kind of thing. And it'll take everything from the center, and it gets a circular motion instead of like a blender goes around in circles and it sucks things down the center. This sucks it, and it's just different. But it's both good. Both of them work good. They're both fine. I just gotten used to this one, and I like how it forces. It seems to force more down instead of stirring. It gets more movement, and especially when you're pushing down. And that's more important, less important in grain mixing, and more important when you're cooking, right? Yeah, yeah, it is. It's horrible. Okay. Wondering if I could start distilling top half of a 30 gal, let the second half keep working off. Yeah, yeah. If you let it work off, yeah, you can take 30 gallons and let the rest. Yeah, it gets drier and drier, and that dryness will carry over to your distillate. You will if you'll be able to taste it. Right, right, right. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, brother. Yeah, and that's basically all it is. I mean, you're not reconverting anything. You're not getting any sugars, and that's the way most sour mashes sadly are done these days. And so it's that's become the new basic standard, I guess, for sour mashing is the corn flavored sugar shine, and that's essentially all it is, because you're not getting any grain conversion, you're not getting any sugars from the grain after that first time. It's just corn flavored sugar shine. You're right. That's all it is. But it's got some sourness, and it's got some things that just a straight, if you were to take just fresh corn and sugar and do it each time, it would have a different flavor. But essentially, yeah, it's just a grain flavored sugar wash. 100% agree. But it is, for people that are on a budget and want to stretch their dime, and it is better than a sugar shine. It's cheap. But if you don't keep adding a little bit of grain every time, eventually it'll start tasting just like sugar shine, and you've defeated your purpose. So um, add that 10% every time, and you can stretch it out, and you can keep it going for quite a long time. But yeah, Clint, I agree. It's not a true sour mash at all. No, no. It depends on the yeast you're using. Bread yeast doesn't mind. High 80s, low 90s. It's bread yeast is fine with that. Um, yeah, I agree. It is. It makes it real easy for people to do, for sure. It depends on your yeast. Some of your wine yeast that we use a lot, and it depends on what you're doing as well. With wine, you want to take your time. Brandies, you want to take your time. Use a wine yeast and keep it in the 75 to 80-degree range. Some even like it a little cooler, longer for sure. You'll get different flavors, if you ferment hot versus cold. So different esters and things are brought forward depending on the temperature in which it's fermented. Whereas with a grain and like a bread yeast or a data yeast, 85 to 90 is not gonna, be the end of the world. In fact, 80 to 85, I think, is about where they, you know, recommended to keep it. But 90 degrees isn't going to kill date or bread yeast. In fact, that's what they, a little bit warmer than that's what you make a yeast starter with. So I wouldn't go to 95. I'd say 85, 80, 85 would be a pretty good all-around temp to keep things. You don't want to go too fast or too slow. But like I said, it depends on what you're looking for. Faster fermentations, hotter fermentations will, you know, add certain notes and esters, whereas slower fermentation will add different flavor notes and esters. So um, different temps, will make for different flavors. But that gets pretty advanced. But just read your yeast and know your yeast, and know that wine yeast is generally going to be 70 to 80, range, and bread yeast and distillers yeast and is going to prefer 80, 80, 85. And it'll work off pretty quickly that way with your grains, and 3, 4, 5 days you'll be ready to run. And again, with speed, with grains, it's a lot less critical because they do work off faster if you got everything right. And 1.0, you're ready to run. 1.005 or whatever, a little bit above 1, you're ready to go. Some people don't want it to get dry, and some people, don't have a choice like me. If it's working and you can't, you're too busy to run it off, sometimes it gets a little drier than you want it to. What's going on, Roy? What's up, brother? What's going on, Dale? I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself, brother? I didn't get to either, so I hope to see you down in Clinton. You going to Clinton? That's good. I'll be there, brother. Look forward to seeing you down there again. Yeah, it's good meeting you and your family there last year. But yeah, we're definitely going to make Clinton. I hope they had a good time there last weekend, or this past weekend at Cyrus's. What is this? Is it this weekend? It was. What, yesterday and today? It was this weekend, wasn't it? It was this weekend. Yeah. Yep. I want to get down to that sometime too. I'd like to meet Cyrus and talk to him. We both admin at some of the same groups, and I watched a lot of his videos and stuff. But I've never had the opportunity to meet him in person. I'd like to meet him and chat with him. Got a lot of respect for him. I like what he does. Yeah, there's no best, when it comes to yeast. There is certain best, like if you're in 85-degree weather and you don't want to chill it, then probably wine yeast, high end wine yeast, probably not going to be your best selection. Maybe, getting a yeast that prefers warmer weather. I know, like tequilas, and the tequila yeast, man, they like it hot. They like, they like the temperature. So it's all definitely going to be based on your yeast. Just, like I say, read the packages. It's like I've been working on the simple how to I talked about Wednesday, and I didn't get a chance to work on it much this week. Thursday and Friday had a lot on my plate, but I'm going to finish it up. But did notice some things in there as far as hey Tammy, where was I? Oh yeah, as far as different, there's so many different ways to do it, and depend on and tell people temps, and especially temperatures for like the amylase, what temperature to add the amylase, because liquid amylase, all liquid, and I did a little research, all liquid amylase doesn't go in at the same temp. So, some say 90 to 110, which is what mine says, and then some says like 120 to 40. And it's like, wow, that's a big difference. So, and that's both glucoamylase. So it depends on the formulation that you have and where you got it, and maybe even what the amylase was made from, and how tolerant it is to temperatures. I guess different types will have different tolerances. So follow the label. So if my recipe says, add that gluco at 190 to 110, that's your yeast pitching temps, look on your label. If your label says add it between 120 40, add it between 120 40, because different gluco will, call to add at different times. I will say a lot of people get beta glucanase confused with glucoamylase, and they're not the same thing at all. So they're both, exo enzymes, meaning they work from the outside in, but they're different enzymes, and more one deals with, Clint and I talk about this all the time, the glucans from a lot of your rye and your wheats and your oats and those things. That beta glucanase helps with those a lot more than just a regular glucoamylase will. So you know make sure that you have what you need, and both of them debranch and work real well. But I think gluco probably works a little better than a beta glucanase. But hello, Miss Tammy. How are you over in Lancaster? Hope you're having a great weekend. Glad to have you with us. Your youngest is getting married, man. That makes you feel old, doesn't it? Awesome, fish fry. That sounds great, brother. Definitely looking forward to that. So what we're going to try to come down early enough so we can do this. We hear you guys go all out for Halloween down there, so we're gonna come and join in the Halloween festivities and check it all out and see what's going on. So it should be a lot of fun. How'd it come out, brother? That sounds good. Now there is a rum yeast that I would recommend, but um, I think it has an amylase built in with it. Let me pull it up here. Trying to see. And it just says rum distillers yeast. But I think it has a specific enzyme in it specifically. Yeah, it's got amyla. Yeah, let me share this with you. It's just called rum distillers yeast, but it's got a specific enzyme in it, and amyloglucosidase. And that's the enzyme I was talking about that they add to the yeast to help break down that some of those unfermentables that normally don't get broken down with just the yeast in your from your molasses. There's some what's called a limit dextrin, which is an unfermentable sugar. It's just too many chains. It's too long, and this stuff breaks that down into something that yeast can eat. So let me share a picture of this with you, and you can take on it. And I'm sure there's several others that do. So just look at them and see. And this generally works better if you want it to go dry. I mean, you can use an EC 1118 and get it down to 1.010, or maybe even a little lower than that, and just go with it. It's not the end of the world if there's still some limit dextrins in the mash that you're running. In fact, some people prefer that. They like the flavor that it adds and gives. So it's not necessarily a horrible thing or the worst thing in the world. And why in the world didn't it save that screenshot like it did that last time? Daggone it. That made me come all the way over here. Let's see. Get a little bit better about my file. I did a little bit of work on those, organizing those. Okay. All right. Let me share this with you. That's what it looks like. And there's several different makers of this other than distilled spirits. There's other people that make a rum yeast, but it contains the let me amyloglucosidase. Like an amylopectin. This is an amyloglucosidase, and it basically breaks down those. And there's other yeasts that have this in it. Let me copy this. I'm not sure if I post it, it's going to go everywhere, but I don't care. There's the name of it. It'll post it like 10 times, but that's okay. Wow, cheap viewers on Steamboat. You know what? I don't want to call my viewers cheap, but they didn't cost me a penny. Uh, okay. Yeah, a lot of people think that glucanase and glucoamylase is the same thing, and it's not. They're not. They both serve the similar functions as far as being exoenzymes working from the outside in. But beta glucanase works really well with like wheats and rye and then that thick gummy glucans, hence the glucanase. And glucoamylase works better just debranching, just strictly debranching. It doesn't give a fuck what it is. It just debranches, and it does a really good job. It does a complete job. So if you just had to pick between the two to do one, I'd definitely pick gluco. But if I was doing like a really high rye percentage rye or a high all wheat vodka or something like that, then I would be using the beta because it serves a different purpose. I'd probably use both, but if I had to choose, I'd probably use the beta glucanase because it's going to break down all that glucans better than just the gluco alone. It's specific for that. And what a lot of people don't realize, you can get powdered beta glucanase. But most people get their beta glucanase, of course, from malted barley and malted wheat and other malts. But I'd say, any of those, Dale, that has that amylo, grab them. Amyloglucosidase. Did that copy? Okay, yeah, it did. That's what they call it. Steel spirits with amyloglucosidase. And that'll help get the rest of it. You get a little more alcohol out of it. That's it, brother. You nailed it before I put it up there. Again. That's awesome. Yeah, that's good stuff for anything to do with and I use brown sugar a lot, which isn't as bad. So brown sugar is okay, but anytime you're using molasses or blackstrap or anything like that, it's a good idea to try to get some of this yeast. It'll definitely help ferment it all out. Because some people, depending on the grade of molasses that you get, I mean, it could I mean, it could be 1.020 or 1.030. I've heard people getting stuck at 3.0 with certain, and I don't know if it's a specific black strap or quality of molasses or what exactly was the situation, but I've heard a lot of people getting stuck at higher um, gravities. Yeah, man. Yes, sir. In fact, I just saw some on sale. I'm gonna have to. I was asking my fiance to check the prices at Walmart, see if it's this grocery store had it on sale. I still don't know if it's cheaper than Walmart prices. So I can't remember. I usually buy a bunch at a time, and I got a little bit of extra, so I got to work through too. I got to try to get some shit done before it's like so much. Here I'm in early thinking about retiring and semi-retiring. It's like, God damn, I've been busier now than I've ever been. It's like, how in the hell did I ever find time for work? Maybe I'll just go back to work so I have to worry about all this other shit so much. I can just have an excuse not to do it. I'm too busy. Yeah, that and it doesn't have to be still spirits. There's I'm sure a lot of different. Here's Angel AG2, and let's see if it's got that in it. I bet it does. It doesn't mention it by name, so no, I'd have to see it in the ingredients before I do it. But that's some of the Angel yeast. So I got a question for y'all. Who out there, Clint, maybe who out there has some of the yellow label Angel yeast and have used it? Yeah, I will. And Costco. I'll have to check them both out for sure. I do know that like Restaurant Depot and Webstaurant, places like that, they have killer deals on it. If you can find one that's close by that will allow you to purchase directly, Restaurant Depot will. Webstaurant, I've got one close to me and they're shipping only. They won't let you come up to the door paying cash, nothing. They don't, nope. It's such a frustration because they got such great prices, and I'd love to be able to just drive up and walk away with a couple of like 5-gallon pails of honey and molasses and a few other things that they have dirt cheap, but you have to pay shipping. And by the time they add the shipping charges on it, well, shit, I just drive up to Fieldbillies and get it and pay for the gas, the time, spend a day, have a good time, and drive back and still be, and Fieldbillies got good prices on it. So after you figure in the shipping costs, you might as well just get it from Fieldbilly. And if you're close to Fieldbilly, you don't have to pay shipping, then you can get great deals on everything. I mean, it's tough. I know, selling things and having to, pay shipping. Shipping's expensive these days, man. Just putting something in the mail and shipping it out's expensive. And so, any way we can cut costs to save on, shipping cost or, buy, just come and get it. Make it worth your while because it is so expensive to ship. And people see prices like, oh, I can't believe you charge that much. And it's like, have you been to the store? Have you been to the post office lately? Have you seen what it costs to mail 40 pounds of corn? I mean, it's not cheap. So make that drive if you can. All right, let me ask you a question. When you kept that, did that have a bad odor in your refrigerator? Because my refrigerator's been fine. I got this yellow label and I hadn't run it yet. I've got to do it. I've been wanting to all fall and well, late summer. Did it add an odd smell to your um, refrigerator? Because it was fine until I got that. Now it's got a real strange odor. Yeah, yeah, yellow label's great. I just wondered about the smell because ever since I bought it, maybe a few weeks after that, and I even put it in a Ziploc. It stinks like fuck. Yeah, this was a little, well, $1.20 is that $1.25? Because that's about what I'm finding. Let me see, 6 times $1.25. Yeah, that's about the same. 7.50. Yeah, $1.25. I think it's about the cheapest that I found it. A pound, yeah. But it's good. Yeah, I got mine. It was on a sale at Amazon. It's half price. So, again, like I said earlier, I've got my list of shit that's on Amazon, and when it goes on sale, I go in every day and I'll look, and it'll tell me all the different things and the price changes, increases, decreases, and that shit dropped to 25 a brick, and I went ahead and pulled the trigger on a brick. I think it's normally like 38 or something like that. So it dropped down to half, but it was a pretty good discount. So I went ahead and picked it up. Yeah, Steve, I like the looks of that second one better. I think that would give that turning action I'm talking about, getting that bottom stirred up better. Oh, just a second. I got something to do. All right. Yeah, it's been in the refrigerator, and I mean, it's only been in there like a month and a half, maybe 2 months, and it shouldn't be doing that. So I'm gonna try to use it. Is it? Yeah, I'm gonna have to talk to you about the Koji yeast combo. Yeah, the shipping's crazy. I think the first time you order, you get free shipping. So if they still have that. So make a big order, make your order big and you get that free shipping on the first order. If they still do that, I don't know if they do. They have the best prices you can find on anything for sure. I mean, cheaper than anybody. But that shipping, and I've got one that's close to me, a warehouse that's close to me. I'd love to be able to just say, do you have that at this warehouse? And if so, can I pay for it and just pick it up at the warehouse? And they won't. They will not allow you to come there and get it. Whereas Restaurant Depot, yeah, come right on. So if you got one of those close by, they're not quite as cheap as Webstront, but they got good prices. And then again, that shipping, is expensive. So if you're anywhere around Philbilly or any of the other brothers that have stuff for sale and you can get to them pretty easily without, a lot of time, money, and gas, I highly recommend it because a lot of these places have good prices, but once you deal with the shipping, you might as well just order it from Philbilly. Oh, right, right. Yeah, yeah. The membership thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'd have to be, in business, and you could write that off, of course, if you were a business doing that. And, if it's, well, yeah, we can't write that off. Um, if you had a hobby and your hobby was making wine and you can legally sell wine. You can legally make wine at home and sell it, right? You can legally make beer at home and sell it up to certain amounts depending on your state. So if that were the case, then you could write that off, that 99, if you sold enough wine to offset it. But, that you'd have to be, you know, pretty good business to do that. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the top of those warehouses, man, it gets hot, especially like you got a warehouse down there in Georgia or something, or Florida or Texas. And it's used to store certain goods for Amazon or whoever, and it's stored, they got a forklift lifting that pallet to the very top row of that warehouse. It's hot as fuck up there. Yeah. All right, guys. I'm getting tired. I'm not feeling the best. Turn on the damn fan. Starting to get old. I get sick every time I eat, man. I feel fine all day, and I'll eat something, man, and it's like I get sick. It doesn't matter what it is either. No, I gotta have to go see the doctor soon. Yes, sounds great, man. I'm gonna watch the Georgia UK game. I know they spanked us. It kills me with UK football, and I know we did great at basketball. And we got a killer team this year. We're gonna spank everybody in the SEC. Just wait. But football, man, how long are they gonna keep Stoops there, man? Why keep him? You make so many fundamental errors in coaching. He won't allow. I mean, he can have a professional offensive coordinator come in there, and he's still trying to tell this offensive coordinator how to run an offense. And this. I think Stoops was a center, or maybe a down guard on defense or something as a player. So probably not the most offensive savvy, background. You know, being a football player, when you watch it's painful. It really hurts to watch this, and it's like, holy shit. it's some of the worst offense. You know, we had trying to think of that guy's name from what was his name? Yeah. Anyway, I think I have to Google it. Maybe I'll pull up his name. Just Liam Cohen. Liam Cohen. Offensive coordinator. Let's see if it tells me what. Is it the Rams? You know, and a pro. He comes in with a great offense, man. And like the first year, he did real well. And I think he just couldn't deal with Stoops. And then he went, well, I think the pros let him go. And then they did really badly the next year and wanted him back. So they brought him back and he left Kentucky. But I think it's about, the last time we've had Shannon Dawson was okay after that. Eddie Grand, not so great. Liam Cohen 23, and now we got Scarangaro, or however you pronounce his name. And he ain't cutting it. He ain't cutting it. But Cohen was probably one of the better ones we've had since. I don't know. Bush Hamlin was pretty good. Shannon Dawson was pretty good back in the day. Even early Eddie Graham, maybe some, but later, no. But yeah, Liam was good. If we could have kept him. But yeah, we just going to have to get a new coach. It's just we got a lot of talent, and we're getting beat by teams with less talent. Anytime that happens, it's coaching, period. That's all you can say. When you lose to a team that has, half the talent and half the recruiting power, and you're losing to that team, you've got out coached. You not outplayed, you got out coached. And it's bad. It's bad for Kentucky, man. And we got him paid so much, it's gonna cost so much. And Mitch Barnhart should never, ever offered him that kind of money because he's not that great. His brothers are both better than he is. But I think one of the brothers coached Oklahoma forever, great coach. But I don't even think he cares anymore, really. But he makes a lot of fundamental errors, calls timeouts when he shouldn't, doesn't when he should, calls wrong plays. It's just, and he overrides offensive coordinators' logic, and it's just not good. Anyway. All right, what are we talking about, brother? Oh, like the warehouse? Yeah. Yeah, stored it in the warehouse. Yeah. Yeah, Miami, Florida State's good. Yeah. Yeah. All right, y'all. I'm going to jump out of here. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. And another great episode. And hope everybody has a great week. And, well, great rest of your weekend and a great week. And by Wednesday, I promise you, I will have the little the guides. I'm going to hand them out anytime the beginner comes in here and says, I don't know what I'm doing. I want to learn how to convert corn or something like that. It's just simple steps. It's nothing, but hopefully, it'll have them getting a few pieces of equipment that they're going to need and teach them, fundamentals, basics, and how to make a decent mash their first time without having to experiment or dig the internet for a lot of recipes or shit. And that I never won't have a chance of producing a good liquor because it's just the wrong ratios and and you know, sugared down after you convert it and adding sugars. It's just stupid. There's a lot of stupid stuff out there. But anyway, guys and gals, good seeing everybody. And hit that like button and share. And if you got some friends that are in the hobby, bring them in. And if y'all need anything, don't forget old Fear Billy. He helps make all this possible for us and basically pays for the stream yards that we can, get our voices out with and educate with. So anytime we can pay it forward, we definitely should. And you can do it for a better person, I can tell you that. But until Wednesday, everybody have a great weekend, an early week. Peace out, shine on, and we'll see you Wednesday at 8. Later, all.